No, don't go in there. Daddy's working.
You are listening to the show for dadpreneurs who want to have it all. Each week, you'll see how you can have harmony in the 4 pillars of purpose: family, faith, fitness, and finances. Welcome back to another edition of Daddy's Working Podcast. I'm stoked that you're here, and I don't know what it is. I do know what it is. The holiday spirit is affecting me. One of my lifetime goals is to be more generous. And right now, it must be the Christmas season, or it must be that I'm thinking about my legacy, but I couldn't possibly be more generous than what I'm doing today, giving you an inside look at training we did for our copywriters. And so maybe you guys know this, maybe you don't, but over at the Podcast Factory, we have a team of copywriters. We've got 6 or 7 copywriters right now who work on our clients' shows. And last year around this time, I became obsessed with this book and this idea. It consumed me, and I decided that it was going to be one of my major goals for 2019. I don't want to date this podcast, but one of my major goals for this year was to implement this. Now, you may or may not have heard of the book. If you haven't, go pick up a copy. Excellent book. It's by Donald Miller, and it's called Story Brand. And inside, he talks about the consumer and how they think, and how most marketers are making people think too hard. See, we don't want to think. As humans, we'd much rather just do things the way we've always done them. We much rather just be simply told what to do. I mean, this is deep psychology, but in the book, he says that people don't want to have to think too hard about what you do. And this was a major problem for us at the Podcast Factory. We had this website up. We have people visiting the website, and all there are is a bunch of album covers. If you guys remember, if you guys have been around for a while, you remember the old homepage was nothing but showcasing all our clients, all their album covers, and you can click through and listen to whatever you want. And the reason we did that was I thought I was doing something good by putting that page out there up front, so when people came to the site, they could listen to a show. I mean, duh. Pick a show you like. It's like a self-improvement jukebox on that homepage. You can hit any number there, and you're going to get something that's going to make you better. Yeah, I mean, that's a lofty goal, isn't it? I mean, sounds amazing, but nobody got it. It didn't really help us. And when people went there looking for help with their podcast, they just couldn't see how we could help them. They had to think too hard. And Donald Miller's book, Story Brand, really brought that home to me. People were trying to burn too many brain cells, and they'd show up on calls that way. Be like, hey, I like you. I like your emails. I like your podcasts, but I don't know what you do. Anybody out there that does sales on the phone, especially when it starts out like that, I don't know what you do, you're in trouble. Because now you got an uphill battle. You want people to show up on calls educated. And that is exactly why I became obsessed with the Story Brand methodology, not only for us here at the Podcast Factory, for me running the business, but more importantly, for our clients. Yeah, because if we could help our clients tell better stories, tell stories that people understand and want to take action on, then we're more valuable to our clients. And we're more valuable to our listeners because we're helping them understand more quickly how we can help them. See, it's a cascading effect. That's why I became obsessed with it, because I knew that getting our story brand right, not just on the website, but in our heads, would be I guess to use a Seth Godin term, would be the linchpin of everything else we're doing, whether it's ads or emails or cold outreach. We had to get our message right. And that would make everything else that we did easier. It would amplify the effects if we got this right. So I spent almost 6 months working on the website and the website copy and what we wanted to say on our story brand homepage. If you guys haven't been to the site in a while, thepodcastfactory.com, check it out. It's pretty simple. Have a podcast in 30 days without headaches or hassles. You don't have to think about what we do. It's written there, and the rest of the page is to just add more to the story, more detail, and what you need to do next. But have a podcast in 30 days without headaches or hassles. That's what we came up with. It's been working really great. In fact, in this quarter, now it's the last quarter of the year as I'm recording this, in this quarter, we bumped up our business nearly 40%, just under 40%, because we've got clearer messaging. And so everything else, we've got a referral program, we've got ads and a book funnel going. Everything else works better because we got the story brand, the message, what we do, how we can help you. We got that. I'm not going to say it's right, but it's pretty damn clear how we can help you. Anyways, why am I telling you about this and all this generosity talk from me? You're getting a supersized episode. It's before, when this episode is released, it's just before Christmas, and I'm feeling generous. I want to give you guys the gift of story brand. And so I told you I became obsessed with this story brand thing. It consumed me, and it wasn't just me. I affected the entire Podcast Factory team, all the writers, audio engineers, Cupcake, everybody. They had to be all in on story brand or this wasn't going to work. And one thing I did was I hired a guy. Look, this is going to sound silly, but I paid $2,000 for the course. I spent the entire month going through it, doing the assignments and pushing through even when I didn't want to, because a $2,000 price tag helped me stay motivated to get my money back out of it. And even after all that, even after I did the work, even after I came up with my own copy, I decided, hey, I need to get a second opinion on this. And I got a referral to a story brand certified dude to help me with my message. And he did. And I like the guy a lot. I like how clear his flow was. And I like the analogies he used because it helped teach our team, the Podcast Factory Copycats Club. We've got, like I said, 5, 6, 7, I don't know how many copywriters right now. It helped them get clear on how to use the story brand. And this is actually one of the big focuses coming into this new year that we're extremely clear on, is the idea that, all right, one last story. This is it. One last story, and then I'm going to give you the training. But this idea, and this is the way we think about it. This is our philosophy. This is how we want our clients to show up to the world. In the story brand, the reader, so whoever your client is, your prospect is, the person reading the copy, they are the hero. They're on a quest and they want to conquer their day. They are the hero of the story. So you can't come in there playing you're the hero too, beating your chest about how awesome you are. You can't do that because then that's two conflicting heroes. We need to be on different adventures. We're not sharing the limelight here. So you got to change the perspective of where you're coming from and where you're meeting your client. And that's where I really love the idea that you are the guide. And that's the position that we've put all our hosts in when we're thinking about the marketing strategy and the positioning of the power notes and how we're going to do all of that is the listener or the reader or the viewer. They're the hero. You are the Yoda. You have the roadmap. You're the guy with experience that can help the hero conquer their day. And so you got the hero. You've got Yoda, the trusted advisor, you, and your method is the roadmap, where you have the pitfalls, you have the roadblocks, you have all the things that are going to get in the way. That's the roadmap, and we position the show as the roadmap. So the hero comes in, they have a problem. You tell them, hey, I have experience solving this very problem. I've done it forever. And this show or this product, whatever it is that you're selling, is the method, is the map, is the way to get this done. That's something we've become very clear on, and we're doing for all our clients. And it's the focus of our strategy, our content strategy here at the Podcast Factory. And maybe I gave away too much. But without further ado, here is an inside look at the training we did for our copycats, the copywriting team at the Podcast Factory. This is the inside training, never before seen or heard. Get it? Story brand training.
All right. So I have 6 things that basically come right out of our story brand training. You could call them maybe story brand writing principles, but a lot of it will be the framework plus extra little things that Don would have said along the way that I've learned to incorporate every single time that I think about. So here they are. Know your audience, which I mean, is writing 101. Create a brand script, but write the copy like chords in a song. Okay, I'll explain that in a moment. Thirdly, understand the difference between external and internal pain points. Okay. Fourth, always be the guide. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how guides show empathy and authority. And sometimes you can show authority without even talking about yourself as the guide at all. Okay. So we'll get into that again. Understand how people read emails and where they read emails. And 6, simple headlines capture attention. So kind of understanding how newspapers are written is a good principle for helping you as a writer. So let's go through all those 6 with you guys, and then please pipe up at any point because we can make this as conversational as possible. So Jonathan, if you have a point that you want to add to, feel free. We're just here to have a conversation that adds maximum value. So
cool.
All right. So the first thing is knowing your audience. And that really goes into what is a lot about StoryBrand, which is who is this for? Right? Who do I want reading this? So if you're writing to chiropractors, then you think, what is the chiropractor struggling with? What does the chiropractor want? Who does a chiropractor want to become? And really just walking a bit in their shoes. One thing that I like to do is just spend about a moment about maybe a few moments, maybe 5 moments, 5 minutes. It's worth it to literally just sit there and pretend you are a chiropractor. So you're actually going to spend time in their shoes, kind of thinking what they're thinking. What are they struggling with? What would it be like if you had a practice that you were trying to grow and you needed patients? So you were a doctor, but you're also a marketer. And how do you wear those 2 hats of being, someone who's just supposed to be a professional, and yet you're trying to get clients in the door? And what happens if they're not? How do you make you feel? And so you as the guide really have to have your heart broken a little bit. And the best way to do that is just to think through. I mean, we're all moving so fast. I understand that a writing project really feels like another thing to do on a seemingly endless to-do list. And yet you'll get much better quality of your writing, and it'll connect so much better if you just spend a little bit of time thinking about that person. Maybe it's, you might want to call it meditation, you might want to call it just reflection, but really the more you get to know them, it's your target, your niche, or whoever you want to be reading this piece of literature. You want to really just think about them for a little bit. It could save you hours to spend 5 minutes just thinking about them.
Give me some tips here, because this is an area where I struggle, is getting, because I have no feelings. I have 2 feelings, angry and angrier. Those are my 2 feelings. But
Yeah.
I think we could all use some tips, if you have them, on
Sure.
how we could get into that mindset, get into that empathy place.
Yeah, because it really is a mindset thing. It's before you've written a single word. You haven't put anything on paper or typed a word yet. You're just trying to think through, what are they like right now? Like, the person, let's say I was on the call with them. What would they tell me their day was like? What are they really wanting to become? So you have to know them a little bit, because it's very hard to write to people that you don't know. Now you could take a psychological approach and say, I'm going to try to think through these people, think through like, what is it that they want, right? They need to be loved. They need to be needed. They want to have their Maslow hierarchy of needs met. And so those are legit things, and you could talk to that. But the more you can, though, maybe it's reading blogs, maybe it's being a part of their social media groups. So I'll give you one example. I was a guest on Kevin's podcast, and then out of that, he invited me into his Modern Marketing Chiropractic group. And the stuff that I have learned since being a part of that group has completely changed how I talk to chiropractors. And it's just knowing them. It's knowing what they struggle with. And then they invited me to be a part of their conference in Vegas. And I got to actually spend 3 days just sitting with them. I learned that they all skip their sessions. They just want to sit and drink and talk to each other. And so I just sat and listened to them, their conversations, and bought them the occasional drink. And I learned what Kevin likes to drink now. So it actually helped me serve Kevin better, so that when I'm writing to people like Kevin and people, that are similarly affiliated with him, I can kind of know these are some of the ways to talk, but these are some of the ways to not talk. And so getting to know them that way. So you can do it through social media, being a part of groups. You can do it through picking up the phone and just talking to some of them. You can do it through spending time with them, or just reading blogs online, or just sitting there and thinking, okay, this is a human being. What are some of their aspirations? And that really does, just taking a moment to reflect on that just stops you from saying, I have a big check mark that I need to put on this to-do item, and I need to just fire something out. I promise you the writing will be so much better if your heart is broken and fired up about the fact that by putting this piece of content out, I can actually make their life a little better. I can get them a little closer to who they want to become, and I can solve a pain point that's keeping them up at night. Man, doesn't that change how we just approach a to-do list? So does that help?
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit, because this is one part that I've also struggled with. Speak a little bit to that aspirational identity and finding that, because I think that's super important.
Right. Yeah. So StoryBrand teaches us that every day your main character wakes up, like the person you're writing to wakes up as the main character in a story. It just so happens that it's their story and they're the most important character in it, and they want to become something, right? So let me just take one subset of my life. Right now, my wife and I would love to do a home renovation. I believe we got a great house, but our kitchen sucks. So the kitchen drives me nuts. And I want people to come over to our house and love our house. And the kitchen is one of the main places that people love to congregate. So what I want to do is I want to make a few choices now. Do I hire a contractor? Do I hire just subcontractors and I become the head contractor? Or do I do it myself? So because I want people to love my house, I now need to figure out, how am I going to make this happen? So what are the advantages of hiring someone? What are the advantages of me doing it myself? Now, if I choose the route to do it myself, I will now aspire to become a DIY master, right? I want to nail this project. So I'm going to need to be at the Home Depot. I'm going to need to be asking questions. All the YouTube videos that I'm going to be watching are all about me becoming this person. And you know what? Google and Facebook and YouTube, they know that that's who I want to become. And they're going to start throwing all this stuff in my feed saying, hey, if you want to become the person who knows how to handle a nail gun or put up a stud or build an island or get the right kitchen cabinets, all of a sudden, these guys are onto it. They're onto my aspirational goal of becoming somebody else, somebody better than who I am. So right now, amateur DIY. I mean, I guess that's the definition of DIY, as an amateur. But I want to become a superstar DIY. So then give me the tools that I need. What are the steps that it takes? What's the process to get there? And I will be captivated by whatever you tell me. So do you want to become this? Are you feeling like this and you want to be there? Do you need a tool to help you get there? Right? And so we all think of think of the podcast factory, right? What's the aspirational goal of someone who's starting a podcast? They want to become a thought leader. They want to get paid more and they want to work less. They want to do less persuasion. They want to do more persuasion, and they want to, double their income, quadruple their income. They want to increase their followership. All these things kind of lead to the fact that they are the main character in their story, and the happily ever after for them is just crushing it on their podcast and getting, twice the revenue for it. And they will wake up every single day saying, I'm just going to take one step further. So I'm going to read Jonathan's stuff. Right. And I'm going to make sure he's going to help me get one step closer. Right. If it's the chiropractic, because Finn did some work in that area. Right. They're thinking about, how do I grow my practice, either so that I can sell it one day, I can make more money, so that I can actually take vacations, I can actually get away from it. And these are the things that I want to be, just a better chiropractor. I want to be a leader in my field. So those are the aspirational goals of them. Does that help, Jonathan, at all?
Yeah.
So I kind of gave 3 examples, right? The home DIY guy, or the person who wants their home to be beautiful, the person who wants a podcast that's successful, and the chiropractor who needs better marketing. Excellent. So they all want to become a little bit better version of themselves.
Finn, I unmuted you. Any questions or any comments?
No, I think that definitely makes sense. What I'm thinking about is, how do we get this into our process?
Right.
Yeah, and I think Jonathan, or which Jonathan am I talking? John.
I'll be John, and he can be Jonathan.
All right. John, do you think it might make sense if we added some sort of templates to our onboarding process for new clients to achieve that? to just kind of, okay, like who do these people want to be rather than what do they want the most? That kind of stuff?
And that's going to be point number 2 is going to be right in your brand script there. And so maybe you have the luxury of taking your client's time, right? And you can say, hey, look, I just, you're hiring me to do this copywriting. I just need to get in your head as you have been in this world for a long time, right? You're writing to these people, you know them better than I. So can I spend 20 minutes with you just talking about what these people want to become and what's keeping them from becoming that? Because this is going to give us a lot more credibility in our copy. Now, maybe they're a super busy leader. They've got tons of stuff on the go. They don't want to just spend time with you on the phone talking about this. So you got to do the research, which means you got to get involved in that world a little bit. And that's why I think the best writers are already kind of niching in this certain area, right? You know your tribe, right? So you're a writer to thought leaders, or you're a writer to dentists, or you're a writer to chiropractors, or business leaders better than anyone. You can write to them. That's why it's so helpful to be a specialist these days, right? Because you've already done the work. So, and then actually people are looking for that, right? I'm looking for somebody who specializes in marketing to this area, or specializes in writing healthcare copy, or specializes in writing technical copy, writing to engineers. So it's scary to have to specialize that much, but if you do that, then you're much more attractive to the person who doesn't want to spend time teaching you about what lawyers are like and what lawyers want to hear about in their copy and who they want to become.
You know what, Finn? Now that you had mentioned that, I don't know if it'd be helpful, but I think that maybe sharing. So when people come on board, one of the things we have them do is a client cloner, and maybe sharing that client cloner with you guys along with that A1 interview might be super useful in getting into the heads of their market, because that's what we spend a lot. I just started only doing the client cloner with people. That might be helpful. So actually, he just dropped off, but that's fine.
Where'd he go? We lost Finn. Don't you hate it when you're giving somebody some gold and then they just drop off the call?
Like, that's John. All right, keep it up. What's next?
All right, so the first one is to really know your audience. And that's the thing, is you can really save yourself a ton of time if you already know them. But there's so much information out there. Like, we are not struggling for a lack of information in our society today. So maybe you read 10 blogs on this area, or you get involved in a social media group where people are already talking, and you just join the group and then you just read through everything that they're talking about, because they will tell you about their pain points. They may not know who they want to become. You may struggle with the aspirational side, but they certainly know what's stopping them from becoming it, because it's their pain. We'll get into that in a moment. So the second point is create a brand script, which is, I think you've already taught through this, right, Jonathan? You've kind of already taught them the hero has a problem who then meets a guide. The guide has a plan. The plan has a call to action. The call to action, if successful, leads to happily ever after. If not, it leads to the negative consequences. Those are the 7 parts of the story brand framework. And so I would do that every single time. Every single time you're doing some writing, just really work through that journey. And I think that's what they've done, because there was certainly some identification of, here's the hero part that I've included, here's the problem that they're struggling with. But the thing is, you don't have to go through the order every single time. You can, but you certainly don't have to. So what the best illustration that I've ever heard about this is, your brand script is like musical chords. Okay, so if you've learned guitar, you know that there's just a certain amount of chords, like G and C and D. These are very popular chords that Taylor Swift doesn't really drift from those too much, just plays the same chords over, but in different progressions, different orders. So what happens when you have your 7 parts of your brand script? You now are able to write songs. You've got the music theory, but now you just take those parts of the brand script and you can plug and play them into different places. So instead of talking about addressing the hero, why not just assume that the hero is reading it because you've got their email address, and start with one of the problems that they're facing. So right then, catch them with the problem. So let me give you an example. If you say to me, John, how was your day? And I say, well, it was an interesting day. I started off, I woke up, I made myself a cup of coffee. I had some breakfast. Then the kids got up, and then we got them dressed, and then they went off to go for a walk. And then I had a call. And then after the call, I went and got myself another cup of coffee. I was a little tired. And after the cup of coffee, I decided to do a little bit more writing, and I went and you're just like, okay, like, tell me about this day in a way that actually is interesting. So I say, you know what? I was so excited to wake up in the morning because I finally, as a young dad, I know that I have to get up before my kids, but you'll never guess what happened. On this day, my kids got up too early, and they were crying because of the, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, the kids got up too early. You missed out on your special alone time. I know what that feels like. That's a real struggle. And your kids are crying. What, are they sick? What's going on? Because the problems, as soon as we talk about the problems, they all get us excited because the story is actually driven by the problem itself. So why not start with the problem? Too many people are struggling with this. And if you're struggling with that, instantly you're going to be like, man, I'm captivated by this because maybe you're going to solve my problem today because I actually have that very problem. And you know they're struggling with that problem because it's right there in your brand script, right? You've done the work already in thinking about, okay, what is it that they're struggling with? So if somebody wrote to me as a young dad saying, are you struggling to find time on your own where you can actually get some real thinking done and your kids are not sleeping enough? I'd be like, yeah, totally. Because that's one of my pain points right now, right? Is my kids aren't sleeping in long enough. And as a result, I feel like my whole routine, that nice routine that I've worked so hard to protect is totally shot. So teach me how how my kids can sleep better and I will pay attention. So you don't have to start with all that. If you're a young dad and you've got young kids, whatever, just say, hey, too many young parents are missing out on opportunities to establish their daily routine because their kids aren't sleeping. And all of a sudden I'm like, bing, tell me the solution, right? Too many people are struggling to start a podcast because they don't have a plan to go with it. Too many chiropractors are losing opportunities because they're not focusing enough on their marketing. And all of a sudden, if you have that problem, you're hooked, right? So you didn't start with the hero necessarily, or you didn't even, another way to do it would be, what if you started with the happily ever after, right? And you started your copy with, imagine how great it would be if you knew that your kids would wake up at the same time every day and it was enough time for you to be able to establish your routine. Imagine how great it would be if people could identify you in a room because they'd listen to your podcast. Imagine how awesome it would be to never have to sell yourself again, right? All of a sudden, you've just taken something from the brand script. Or you could even pull in, like if you're a dentist, you'll lose every single one of your teeth that you don't floss. It's like, oh, shoot. Okay, I'm listening. But you didn't start with the hero part. You started with the consequences of not taking action, right? So you're just taking that and you're writing a song. Every piece of copy that you write is a song made of chords from your brand script. Okay, that's a lot of talking. Jonathan, any thoughts? Finn, anything about that?
I got him muted, but I'll unmute you, Finn. But what John said, just quick synopsis that you might have missed, was that we don't have to start in all the order of the 7 pieces of brand script. Once we have a brand script, we can take different pieces and put them together and make musical copy.
There you go.
Yeah. And the question that I had was, obviously there is within StoryBrand, you usually have the 7-step framework. And John, you just mentioned something about, okay, how do you start, or what if you started with the whole transformation part of it? So is the framework not as rigid? Does it work if I kind of take it apart and move it again? Is it more like a checklist, or is it more like a process that has to go through the 7 steps every time?
Yeah, it can be a checklist and it can be a process. In fact, when I make a website, I literally follow the exact same process every single time. I start with the image banner is always happy people enjoying the product with a headline that's very clear about what you can offer them. So I take from the aspirational side and then I put a call to action right in there. But then right underneath the fold, I always put the problem, because people are like, why does this website even exist? Well, it exists because too many people are struggling with this, right? And then all of a sudden you introduce the solution with the guide. So I do that every time and it's like clockwork. However, when you're writing an email, you don't have to write all that all the time. Or if you're writing a blog for a client, or if you're writing a lead generator, you don't need to start with that same framework every time. What you do is just pull from different parts and put together something that's unique. Otherwise, it could get really boring. But I would say make it unique because you have creative flexibility to use the framework in the way that you feel like it's called for during this campaign, this automation, this lead generator, this blog, whatever it is that you're writing.
I think for us, Finn, specifically, it's in our favor that we have the brand script first, but then we pluck the pieces that we want to get the action, because we're about the direct response aspect. And so whatever action we're looking for in that piece, we just need to pluck the right pieces for it. And we don't necessarily need to go through each line item down the road and all that. So I think that was huge. That's huge for me even, because that makes life a lot easier.
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe you just take the plan, right? Take that 1, 2, 3 part from it. And that's an entire email. right? So if you've been reading me for the last, or reading these emails for the last 20 emails, and they're full of case studies and how we solve a problem, but you're just wondering, what's the plan? Well, in this email, we're going to tell you, 1, do this, and then we're going to do this, number 2, and then number 3, we're going to do this, and all of a sudden, boom, you're done the email. So all you've done is taken one part of the framework and written your copy, and then you're done, right? You just say, and now take the call to action. Let's go back to number 1. It was schedule a call. So schedule a call, signed, the Podcast Factory.
All right. That makes a lot of sense. Got it.
So these are just tools that you can use, which would be, I guess, similar to taking one chord in a song and just playing or strumming your guitar one. But hey, if it works, then it works. But yeah, you can see that's a good opportunity for some content, would be just one part of the framework. Or in this blog, we're just going to talk about what happens when you don't deal with that chronic pain that you're struggling with. In this email, we're going to talk about what happens if you don't sleep train your kids. They're going to run over your entire life. They're going to have no discipline. You're going to be complete a dread at work every single day. And all these, just list the consequences. And all of a sudden, you've got a really compelling email. Now, you don't always do that. It's not like, oh, here's another consequence of not working with us. You change it up. So in the one email, you told them what's going to happen if you don't work with us. But in the next email, you say, here's what happens when you do work with us. And you just tell a story of how great their life could be. And then you mix it up with another one of a case study of somebody that you changed. And what that does is it establishes your authority as a guide who helps people. So there's no shortage of options. It's not like when you do a brand script, you're only stuck with one email to write or one drum to bang for the rest of your experience with that client, or if it's your own work.
Right.
So that's number 2. Any thoughts about that before we move on?
Yeah, I have. I kind of have to get going because we usually do these calls in half an hour. So that's kind of what I budgeted. So I'm sorry about that, but I might have a woman screaming at me because dinner is ready pretty soon.
Nice.
Nice. Just
we'll have the recording up.
Yeah, perfect. Just one more question that I kind of went into this call with. When you talk about being the guide, and I know that's one of your 6 things also, what would you say, like, does the guide always have to be, in our case, the client, the podcast host, or can the guide also be, something like a concept? Because to me, something that I try to do is I try to make the copy as much about the reader, about the customer as possible, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the copy gets less salesy when we try to not mention like all the great things the client has done, especially if it's something like podcast show notes, where obviously people might be reading them for the 12th time. And when it's, when it's again like, hey, Kevin has done all these great things and you can do them too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So kind of what I'm asking is, if we were to put it in like Joseph Campbell terms, like could the guide also become the potion?
Right. Well, this was one of my things is always see yourself as the guide. And the guide really doesn't need to take all the credit for it. So the guide is in the business of solving people's problems. And by doing that, even just showing up with an email, you're being a good guide because you're saying, look, I'm sending you this email today because there's something that I can help you with. And one of them is solving this problem that you have. So in fact, I don't even need to talk about myself at all. I could just solve the problem. Imagine if you had a math problem. The reader is just sitting there thinking, I can't solve this problem at all. And you show up and say, if you're struggling with this math problem, let me help you solve it. And you kind of work with them, you empower them, you teach them, and then maybe even just say, here's the answer. At that point, you don't need to actually walk away and be like, look at me, look how great I am. I solve math problems. It's like, they just look at you and say, you know what? I was struggling with that and you solved the problem for me. Thank you very much. You've been a good guide today. And it's actually their responsibility to say thank you rather than saying, look at what I've done. So there is a time when you can also say, look at who I am and all that. But it's not always appropriate. So you don't always need to play the guide card in your writing. You just need to always play the guide. That my responsibility is not to draw attention to myself. My responsibility is to help you get out of your pain towards who you want to become. And this email is going to be a part of that transition or that progression.
Okay, perfect. That makes a lot of sense. So I'm gonna have to leave here. But yeah, thanks so much. This has been like super enlightening. I've had quite a few light bulb moments, and I'll definitely be taking notes at the replay. So perfect.
Fantastic.
All right. Thanks.
Great rest of the day. Bye.
Wonderful.
All right.
So I think that's an authority piece. I think, Jonathan, that's important is as the guide, we don't always have to talk about ourselves. We just have to show up and help them. So by taking time to write out an email or if you're a guide and you hire somebody, you're investing in your character's journey. You're saying, I don't necessarily have the time to write it myself, but I'm going to hire this copywriter who's going to take the time to figure out one way that you're struggling so that we can take you out of that pain towards where you want to be. And I don't need to talk about myself at all to do it. I just am establishing my authority. Hello, Alex. Good to see you in and out there like a fiddler's elbow.
Sorry, I've got such bad connection. Ridiculous.
Totally fine. Totally fine. It's just good to have you. We've been talking about how we have a recording that's going to be available. So,
yeah.
Totally there for you when you have great connection.
Fantastic.
That's good to see you, though. Awesome.
All right, brother.
Awesome. All right. So that's a way that we do the guide is we have to put away that innate human desire to make ourselves look good. I actually like to share a story of when I was doing the dating in my 20s. I was just a mess because I'd always try to talk about like, hey, here's a story about somewhere interesting that I've traveled. Oh, here's a celebrity that I've met. Oh, here's a high school sporting accomplishment that I'm really proud of. I couldn't figure out why the girls weren't interested in that. Right? And then I started to, in my 30s, take an interest actually in the person that was in front of me and listen to what did they want to do? Who do they want to become? Where do they want to go? What are some things that have shaped them to who they want to be and how does it help them get to where they want to, like who they want to become? And then all of a sudden I married my wife because of it, right? Yeah, 3 kids later. I should have maybe just kept talking about myself. I would have slept more. But anyway, that's another story. But anyways, you play the guide and you actually take an interest in people. You have to get over yourself. Right? It's just like every day I got to wake up just as I put on my clothes, I have to remind myself, this life is not about me. In fact, if I make it about me, I'm going to push away the very people that matter in my family, in my friends, and in my clients. If I try to make everything about taking from them and, can I get attention to myself? I'm going to be useless to them and they'll find someone else to help them. They'll say, you seem like a real important person. You're the hero of a story. But in fact, if you'll just step aside right now, I need to meet a guide who's going to be focused on helping me win my story. Because in a world of limited time and resources, I don't necessarily have time to listen to you talk all about yourself.
Yeah.
So when we write these emails, blogs, or whatever kind of copy, it's always got to be from the framework of, I am here to make someone else's life better. I'm here to help them get the things that they need to become the people they want to be. And that's what it means to always be the guide.
I think that's what we're doing. I think that's what the guys do great here is we've made it a point to make our reader, the reader of the email, the reader of the show notes, the listener, be the hero and position our hosts as the guide and whatever they're selling as the plan. So those are things that are set in stone. The other pieces can be moved around, but those 3 pieces, I think they have a good handle on.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, we have to tell the client too, right? The reason why your podcast exists is not to draw attention to yourself and how smart you are and how important the people are that you can have on the show. The purpose is to find a group of people who need your help and show them that you are in the business of solving their problems. That people like them struggle with things like this because they want to become these type of people as well. So that's what I mean by always be the guide. But that we just talked mostly about authority. I just want to touch briefly on the empathy part of a guide because you can have tons of authority and all sorts of degrees and you have a huge bunch of testimonials. But people also want a personal connection as well, a touch point showing that you're a human and they're a human and you understand some of the things that they're struggling with. And so what good guides do is they have that authority, but they also have empathy. And empathy simply means I understand or I know what you're going through. I know the struggles, the pressures, the fears, the anxiety that you have. And I'm going to be there now to make that connection to show you that this doesn't have to be the way it is forever for you, right? So empathy is so important. In fact, if you read some of the literature about the importance of empathy in our marketing today, you'll know that that's a guide characteristic. That's people want to trust the people that get them, right? I read this person's stuff and they get me. They just know me. And it's like we've never met before, but they've been reading my mail or something. And that's what good guides do. They put those 2 things together, authority and empathy, and they marry them together in our copy. So those are 2.
So to add to that, and this is something I've been saying all week, and that's why I want to bring it up again. I believe it's Simon Sinek says, people want to do business with people who believe what they believe. And so what we've been looking at, we've been talking to different show hosts and different folks who are starting shows. And we have eliminated a bunch of our intake forms and moved to solely the client cloner and really their core values. And I think that ties in the empathy and the core values. If you believe what I believe, then we're alike, and I like you and you understand me, so I'm more likely to listen to you. So that piece there, I want our writers who do this all the time to be thinking about, just people who believe what I believe, and think about all the people that you love and think about why you love them. Like, why would you love a Ben Settle? Because he hates lazy people and he's lazy himself, but he makes money, whatever it is. I think those little connection points are going to be what converts somebody to being like a raving fan, is that empathy component.
Yeah. Yeah. And just try to look through your copy and see if you have the word understand in there somewhere. Understand and its cousin, know. So I know what you're feeling. I understand the pain. I understand the frustration. It's just like you've walked in their shoes a little bit. That's why it's so important to have your heart broken by their situations, because when your heart is broken, you can actually connect with them human to human, right? Whether you're B2C or B2B, whatever, it doesn't really matter. We're always H to H. We're always human to human. And good writing really connects on the human level with people. So that's what it means to be a guide, because you really do care about them. Okay, so we skipped one. That was number 0.4. But 0.3 is just knowing the difference between the two types of pain. And it's a common mistake that people make. They kind of get a little bit focused on the external pain that people are feeling, but the internal is really what motivates us to actually take action. So a plumbing situation, I use this example a lot. There's the problem of a plumbing situation is when water's not passing through pipes, but the real driver to cause me to move is the anxiety and the frustration that comes from knowing there's water spilling all over my floor, right? It's a huge insurance headache. I got to call a plumber. Now all of a sudden, I have deep daddy wounds because my dad never taught me about plumbing enough. And those are coming to the surface now. And I'm like, this little bit of water in that tiny little pipe over there has created a hurricane of emotions inside of me. And I tell you, you focus on the water and you're just like everybody else. You talk about the emotions that's going on, and all of a sudden you've got some really good writing in there. And that's the difference. We talk about the external problem and the internal. We often think that, businesses, they just talk about the external. We do this, we build homes, we fix clogged pipes, we help launch podcasts. But really, what's really focusing on, what really grips people is when you talk about what they're struggling with internally. So what's the anxiety of people that they're going through when they watch someone else succeed, when they see another podcast get launched, when they see other chiropractors in their town who are far worse than them, all of a sudden getting all the new clients or getting to the top of Google, right? What's the frustration they have of trying to run their website and they just can't do it on their own? And they've wasted time, they feel like, they're anxious about it and they're losing money. All of a sudden now you start talking about that, right? Is your website causing you to lose money? Are you losing sleep because your website is causing you to lose money? Far more powerful writing than just focusing on this. And too many people just talk about the external problem.
That's huge.
All right. So those are the two things that we need to focus on, external and internal. There's a lot of talk about the philosophical problem in the StoryBrand book. And I'll just say this. Load up your statements with things that should happen or deserve to happen. And you've kind of focused on really powerful statements. Everybody who's a thought leader should have a podcast. Okay, well, that's quite powerful. You shouldn't have to struggle with how to create a podcast when we have great tools. You deserve to have your voice heard. Stuff like that. Should and deserve are great ways to talk about solutions to problems or what should not happen because you're struggling with the problem. So
on the philosophical side, right?
Yeah,
the big
picture.
That's
the philosophical. I don't always talk about as much about the philosophical side because I think there's so much correction that needs to happen on getting on the internal side. So just to summarize it, external is the brokenness of this world. So there's something wrong in the world. I can see it. I can touch it, taste it, smell it. But my reaction to it is the internal side of it, right? So that's what actually connects with people. It's their internal reaction to a physical external problem. There you go.
Dude, that's gold right there.
Okay.
That is
happy to help. All right. So now we're going to get less of the theoretical and more into the practical. And these are just 2 points that, forgive me if it's just reinforcing what you've already said. I hope it's not, because it's just a good reminder. We need to be reminded often of things more than we need to even be informed of things. So if you already know this, but understand how people read emails. We read very plain emails. One of the things I like about getting emails from the Podcast Factory is they're not decorated with all kinds of GIFs and big flowery fonts and just huge. It's just like getting an email from a friend, and it's very simple, and I can just read through it quickly. And so listen to that, what I just said. It's simple and I can read through it quickly. I don't need an art project. I don't need all kinds of, design in it. I just want to read it like I'm getting an email from you. I want the content, but I'm not going to read through it all like I'm going to read a research paper or something. Right? So I've read my share of books and research papers, and I don't want to read those anymore, especially when I'm on the can first thing in the morning, right? What I want is something that I can just fly through. And the best way to fly through something is if you give me some short paragraphs, but really catchy headlines. So start with your subject. You guys know that. You know about subjects. Bait them with the subject, and then give them in the preview a little bit of what's going to come. So I want to know that if I open up this email, if I spend some of my precious God-given time, that it's actually going to be valuable for me. But then I might not even read every one of your points, just the ones that are solving my particular problem on that particular day. So the way I'm going to know that is that you're going to break it up and say like major, like bold headline 1, bold headline 2, bold headline 3. And then you're not going to load up your copy with really long paragraphs. Jonathan, you already know this because your paragraphs are very short and just really punchy, which is great. The thing I would like to see is just a little bit more like here's 1, here's 2, and here's 3. Just like people would read, say, anything with bullets, right? We love our
blog
bullets.
post.
Like a blog post. It's just a little post. So that's the number 5 is just know that people are not necessarily reading all your words, and that's totally okay, right? All you want to do is hit them with the headlines and then invite them in to read the actual stuff. But sometimes the headlines do enough of the heavy lifting where they say, this guy or this gal is a good guide in that they've written something, they've invested in my life, and they've solved a little problem. I don't have time to get into it all because, I got lots of other things to do. And this is a bonus. I didn't even see this email coming or I didn't see this podcast coming out, but they've hit me with just these really nice bullet points that I've been able to scan through. Now, somebody might actually be like, I really want to read more about this. And so they'll actually listen to the podcast, or they'll spend more time reading your blog or reading your show notes. And they're going to read through every word and kind of psychoanalyze it. But many people won't. And it's whatever they choose that day, it's okay because you've shown up in their inbox and provided them with enough value that they needed to say, this person is a trustworthy guide, and now I'm going to take the next step. Like, that's really all we want. We want to get the hire, right? We want to make the sale. And so show up, and even just the email itself is like 10 times further along than what most people are doing, right? Jonathan, you know that. Just showing up and writing a nurture sequence is doing a lot better than 9 out of 10 businesses that I work with.
I think the guys are really good at this. I'll give them a compliment on this. The guys are great at writing curiosity-based bullets. That's one of the superpowers of this team.
Good. Yeah. And so that would be the last point would be just understand copywriting 101. Like I said, forgive me if it's already been taught in some time in your material, but the point of a newspaper headline is to get you to look at the subheadline, right? So headline says something that then I say, oh, what does a subheadline say? And then the point of a subheadline is to get you to read the actual paragraph itself. And the actual paragraph or content itself is also made of other subheadlines, which are the points. So this is how copywriting works. It's hey, I'm going to try to capture your attention with a headline, and then I'm going to try to draw you in with a subheadline. But really the point is to get you into the next part, and you're warming them up to actually read the paragraph. So if you think along those lines, then you'll really utilize the power of a headline and a subheadline because you want them to get to the actual content. You didn't write all that content so that it would be skipped over. You're actually trying to draw them in. So here's the point then, is make sure your headlines are they don't have to be clever anymore. They don't have to be creative. They just have to be clear. Because, and you're going to laugh at this because it's so true. I've never had a client call me up and say, John, on your website or on your next email, could you just give me a riddle that I could then think about for about a day? In fact, I don't have a lunch appointment today, and I just have an hour where I just want to sit there and try to think, what is John selling in this riddle? It's like, that's ridiculous. Wouldn't it be nice if people just came to us and said, I'd love to have a riddle today. But the truth is, I hate riddles. I skip over every single riddle. I'm just like, I don't want a riddle. I don't have time for riddles. I just want a clear, disaster happened in Los Angeles today. Okay, well, now I'm curious. What is it? What's the disaster? Or make $1 million this year. Okay, well, I'd love to do that. And then how do I do it? Well, you can launch your own podcast. Okay, now this is making $1 million by launching a podcast. Okay, fine. I'll find out how I can make $1 million by launching my own podcast this year. You see how it works?
Tell me.
You're already doing it. Look at you. Look at you. You've made it, Jonathan. You've got, anyways, okay. well, we won't get into our personal finances. That's not where I was intended.
Not on this show, no.
Yeah, but don't tell riddles with your headlines, because people don't want riddles. They don't have time for riddles. What they want is clear, concise explanations of what you're going to tell them that invite them in to read more, right? And the more you can tap into that aspirational side, which we talked about in number 1, the more you're going to have their attention. So you're not going to write headlines in a chiropractor sequence about disasters in Los Angeles. You're going to write about something in their life. So you already kind of got them because you know your niche at this point, right? So write simple headlines that target what they're thinking about, that they're going to say, okay, I've read that. That's interesting. It's invited me to go further. And that's how people read newspapers. That's how people read emails. No riddles, no creativity, no, just clarity. Clarity is the new gold standard because people are moving so fast, right? You just have a blip moment to catch them and you don't want to confuse them. So 6 points. Know your audience, create a brand script, but use it like you're writing a song, not as an actual script that you have to use every time. Understand the difference between the two kinds of pain points, external and internal, and then you can add philosophical, but we didn't quite get into it because it's a whole nother thing. Always be the guide. Guides show empathy and authority. Understand how people read emails. Got to be short. Keep your paragraphs short. Just make one point in it, and then give nice headlines which guide people along. And then no riddles as you do your headlines that capture attention and invite people to read more. That's my thoughts for you today. As I've read those 3 writing samples that were sent, I thought, hey, we're dealing with some experts here. These people aren't your hack grade 6 writers, but definitely something I thought I could help with. And I hope it has been.
Super. That was more than I expected, John. Very generous. Hey, Alex, you want to ask anything or say anything? You're welcome to.
No, I need to go back through because I've missed quite a bit of the content, but for the last couple of points I did here, it's been very eye-opening for myself, especially the internal and external emotions.
Emotion and reaction.
Yeah, emotion and reaction.
Huge.
I know I've been, in the past, been guilty of sticking on the surface level stuff, which again, like you said, 9 out of 10 people are doing the same thing. But yeah, the whole story brand thing puts a whole new, a different element on writing as it is, I think. And I appreciate your time as well. An hour of solid content like this is going to help every single writer in this podcast factory, I think.
In the stable,
yeah.
Well, I'm a friend of Jonathan, and so Jonathan's friends tend to be pretty cool. So I'm happy to help them out. So
awesome.
Cool.
One call to action too. If you guys are interested in StoryBrand, I have this thing that we mentioned in the beginning called the StoryBrand, or actually no, I can't call it StoryBrand. The Get Clear Virtual Summit, where I feature my favorite StoryBrand guides, and they're just going to give their expertise for 45 minutes in an interview with me, where I just talk to them about copywriting, website, speaking to nonprofits with StoryBrand, speaking to various niches and stuff. Photographers, I think we have a session on that. And so if anybody is interested in that, just go to getclearsummit.com and then they can be a part of it totally free. So
all right, I'm in on that, and I'll buy the. You better make the tapes available for us.
It's awesome. It already is. Yeah.
All right. Good. All right. So I think that's everything. We went longer this time, but I think this is going to be a super valuable resource for the team. So
100%.
Thank you, Alex, for working so hard to be here. Finn, you were here earlier. Kyle, this is the first meeting he doesn't make. He missed a big one. And John, super generous. And there's some nuggets there, bro. I might pull out some sound bites for you because you need those things like that.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
External. That was money. That was money.
Good.
All right, cool.
No, here to serve. It's all yours, man. So use it at your as you need it, and happy to help show up.
All right, guys, that's it. That's a wrap. Enjoy your weekend. Stay out of trouble. Don't make any more kids until you're ready.
Yeah, amen to that. Amen. I finally figured out what kept causing it, so we're finally looking at
the 5-year-old condom. Got it.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.